Hello, welcome to the Construction Work Health webinar series. My name is Deirdre Rutherford and I am the facilitator for today's webinar. I am a Principal Advisor in the Ergonomics Unit here at WHSQ. The inaugural Construction Work Health Forum was held in March earlier this year. The forum was well attended and, more importantly, very well received by industry. We have created this webinar series based on some of the most popular presentations and workshops on the day, so that they may be shared with a broader audience than those who are able to attend the forum. However, if you were able to attend on the day, I'm sure you will enjoy seeing the presentation again. We are fortunate that a number of presenters from the forum have kindly made themselves available to present their presentation from the forum again, and we thank them all very much for doing so. This 5-part webinar series covers a range of topic areas. These are Good, Better, Best, Applying Good Work Design Principles to Maximise Health and Wellbeing, presented by Dr. Rebecca Loudon. Engaging Your Workforce, presented by Daniel Hamadal. Silica, Managing the Risk, presented by our own Brad Guinitz. Alert at Work, a practical approach to identifying and managing workplace fatigue risks, presented by Jenny Krasny. And finally, Who is at risk of too much sitting in construction, presented by Dr. Nick Gilson. Registration for the remaining webinar is still open. The registration link is available on the WorkSafe website. We do anticipate that today's session will take approximately 45 minutes, and a recording of the webinar will be made available on the WorkSafe website in a couple of weeks. We encourage you to share this with your colleagues and networks. The presentation itself should take about 30 minutes and will be followed by a short Q&A session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them into the chat box and select Send to all panelists, or type your question through the Q&A chat box. We will try and get through as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. Today's presentation is entitled Alert at Work, a practical approach to identifying and managing workplace fatigue risks. And I would now like to introduce you to today's presenter, Jenny Krasny. With over 15 years of consulting experience, Jenny has led some of Australia's most respected mining, construction, engineering and manufacturing organisations through strategy development, safety culture change, change management, executive coaching and leadership development. A dynamic and engaging facilitator, Jenny is accredited in a variety of leadership and culture tools and is a master facilitator with the International World's View Academy of Change. While any opportunity to take a person, team or organisation from a state of good to great is work that Jenny embraces wholeheartedly, projects that involve navigating through the seemingly impossible to find a path of clarity is work which she most thrives. Jenny has a Master of Organisational Psychology degree from the University of Queensland, specialising in cynicism to organisational change, and is currently completing a PhD under the guidance of Professor Sydney Decker and Drew Ray from Griffith University, where she is focused on identifying the elements that contribute to progress in safety within the mining, manufacturing and engineering sectors within Australia and overseas. I'll now hand you over to Jenny to get us started on today's webinar.
Well, hello everyone. Before we get started, what I'd love to do is to encourage you to engage with the poll question that you should be seeing on the slide in front of you. And the question is, what are your attitudes towards someone suffering from fatigue? And some of your answer options are, you'll see on the screen, 1, fatigue is the new stress, an excuse to get out of hard work. Fatigue seems to be part and parcel of today's world. Or finally, fatigue is nothing that a good night's sleep cannot fix. If you are willing to respond, please do so, and I will certainly engage with your response later throughout the presentation. Each time I ask this question, I think of my father. My father is now sadly deceased. He passed away when I was 16. However, my dad was a shift worker. He worked along building railroads across Australia. He travelled to different construction sites, and when he'd come home, he'd want to be a dad as well. So he worked long hours. He then made his day longer by attending to us kids, and my mum would often ask him, how about you go and have a sleep? How are you feeling? And my dad would often respond to this whole thing of fatigue and exhaustion. I'll have time for sleep when I'm 6 foot under. Well, I'm hoping he's having a really great sleep now. Just like the need to eat, drink, and exercise, the need for sleep is normal and natural. Human beings need it for optimal performance. Despite our growing knowledge about the benefits of sleep, we continue to be the only species on Earth that denies itself sleep. And the impact of this? We sometimes need a hand to pick us up, call it out, and even remove us from the direct line of fire. And just a cuppa won't do. Even the most skillful, safest operators will lapse into fatigue. We are terrible at being able to correctly assess how we are feeling. This operator has 25 years experience behind the wheel, one of the safest and most reliable operators on site. Yet, despite indicating he was fit for work during the pre-start, he managed to drive into a drill rig during a micro-sleep. This training officer, again, like his colleague before, also indicated feeling alert and fit for duty. He too managed to drive himself into a hole and cause $1.5 million damage to the truck, all due to falling asleep at the wheel. Interestingly, he was in with a trainee driver at the same time that this occurred. These fatigue events are not unique. Unfortunately, 1 in 5 people report to be sleep deprived, be it due to medical reasons, emotional concerns, financial pressures, little kids running around the house, pets jumping on the bed, or even sleep hygiene reasons. This figure is staggering. What is more staggering is when asked if people would speak up during a pre-start or a meeting, or if in the unfortunate event of an accident, would they admit to feeling fatigued? Less than 25% of the population would be willing to let their employer know. With the stigma associated with speaking up about fatigue, it makes it difficult for the organisation or loved ones of the individual to intervene. And not doing so can lead to many undesired consequences, individual or organisational. Fatigue is estimated to cost Australia over $3 billion a year, and that figure is staggering given that this is based on figures and data given from people who will speak up about fatigue, not to mention those who won't. So what can we do about it? As is the case with most things, there are always 2 sides to every coin. In this case, it takes both the work of the employer and the employee to make a meaningful difference. For the employer, as a start, consider these 4 broad questions. If your answer falls into the I don't know or no category, I'd encourage you to have a poke around and investigate. Places to start: does your environment, your contracted work schedule, your culture, your conditions promote optimal performance? Now for the employee. Despite an organisation's best efforts, you have a role to play too. It's tough for an organisation to act and help you if you can't even help yourself. Do you work hard and party hard? Where does sleep factor in your dynamic at work and at home? Many organisations have a lot of great things in place to help reduce the risk of fatigue. There's education, there's policies, there's procedure. These days, with the dawn of technology, individuals and organisations can take a step forward towards better managing their fatigue. With technology now, we can make better, informed decisions about how we work, be it gadgets that can be worn on the eyes, wrist, or head, through to units installed in our vehicles. Each can serve to help catch an employee when they need it most, as they're about to fall asleep or when they're distracted. This data can then help inform work schedules, or particularly breaks within the work schedules, not to mention educating the employees themselves how they can better manage their sleep. Training and education is important. Without it, we cannot expect our people to know what to do and how to do it. Coupled with technology, training now becomes more meaningful, with people being able to note the very things they can do personally and in the organisation to increase alertness on site. The number of times where I've put some technology on individuals to wear for a month or 2 weeks, it's staggering how many will come back and say, gee, Jen, I didn't realise that I was as sleepy or as fatigued as I actually was. And so now when they engage in training around fatigue, it is so much more meaningful to them. Of course, this data can also inform and update our existing policies and procedures. Nothing is written in stone. And here's this word again, culture. Despite the best protocols, it will be culture and leadership that will determine the ultimate success of any fatigue control or intervention. But what do we mean by culture? To answer this question, I refer to the work of Dr. Dan Peterson. Through his work across a variety of industries in the Northern Hemisphere, he arrived at 6 criteria that must be present to bring about a culture of safety excellence, to bring about a culture where people look out for each other around fatigue and actively manage it. In his criteria, you'll notice that the first 2 involve leadership to be visibly and actively involved. This isn't simply writing a policy, signing it, and sticking it on a wall. This is about leaders actively in the workplace engaging with individuals and showing them how fatigue should be managed and responded to. This is about top leadership turning up to work at reasonable hours and leaving for home at reasonable hours and not sending emails in the middle of the night. Frontline supervision is performance focused, and this isn't just about employees looking at KPIs around how many people are fit for work. This is about frontline supervision actively engaging in conversations with each individual, asking them how are they feeling, performing a fatigue risk assessment, looking at someone's eyeballs to notice whether they're fatigued, emotionally distressed, or whatever else might be contributing to their fatigue. Naturally, for a culture to be an engaged, safety, excellent kind of culture, we have employees that are actively participating. And what this means is not simply employees turning up and doing what they're there to do. This means employees being invited to contribute to how training, education, shift scheduling, rosters, and other things are done on site. Naturally, for that to occur, the system has to be flexible to accommodate what the requirements of the workers are. Every site, every team on a site will have slightly different requirements. So it's important that the system is able to be flexible to accommodate this. And finally, any system, be it a risk management system, a fatigue policy, a safety excellence system, for it to be actively worked and embraced, it needs to be positively perceived by the workforce. But criteria on their own won't work if there's no accountability. For true accountability, each layer of the organisation needs to know what to do, needs to be trained how to do it, to do the right things, measure the right things, and ask the right questions to ensure fatigue management stays on the radar. recognition is one of the biggest things that many of our organisations here in Australia really struggle with. And I'm not referring to your typical recognition program. I'm genuinely referring to the basic conversations that a supervisor, a leading hand, a frontline person can have with another around noticing someone and giving them genuine feedback around what they're doing well or where they need improvement. To help you reflect on how well your organisation reflects the 6 criteria and the model of accountability to which I've just talked to, a PDF of this questionnaire will shortly be made available for you to use in your business. Simply print it out and invite a variety of people in your business to complete it. Once done, the data will give you a sense of what you might need to do next in relation to managing your fatigue. Now, interestingly, at the start of the webinar, I invited you to respond to a question. What are your attitudes towards someone suffering from fatigue? And overwhelmingly, the response was fatigue seems to be part and parcel of today's world. That's quite disappointing, but it's the reality. We're always on. I certainly know for myself, I travel a lot for my work, and when I'm not with a customer, I then go back to my hotel room or my donga or wherever else I'm staying, and I catch up on my day job. If I'm working from home or working at home in Brisbane, I will come home to 2 kids and a husband that need to be attended to as well. And once they're attended to and in bed, guess what? The laptop, the phone, something comes up. We work in a very busy world where our attention is being demanded from every single angle. So busyness and tiredness seems to be real. And it's time for our organisations to recognise this and genuinely recognise it, not simply through education and policies and procedures, but genuinely engaging in conversations with their employees as to what we can do better. Burning the candle at both ends just to get through life is not the answer. In fact, as we know, doing so just makes us perform even worse. There is absolutely no shame in needing sleep. After all, we're not embarrassed to take a break, to use the bathroom, drink some water, get some food, even go for a walk. Why should we be ashamed to ask for a break to get some sleep?
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you all for the questions that have been coming in through the presentation. We will attempt to get through as many as we can in the time we have left. Jenny, when we think about work-related fatigue, high physical and or mental demands, shift work, long hours, etc., how do we get companies to focus controls at the top of the hierarchy? That is, through the design of the work.
That's a really great question. If it was simple, we'd all be doing it, of course. And one of the responses to this question is we really need to be going to the workers themselves and asking them, how are they finding the work? How are they finding the schedule? Is the work itself not only demanding on a mental or physical perspective, but is it also dull? Is it monotonous? We know that boredom can certainly trigger fatigue and distraction. It's about engaging with the employees, seeing what they're doing, understanding how they're managing their life, and only then asking them what do they believe could be done to not only control for, but also manage fatigue more effectively. This can be through anything from doing a very simple risk analysis to identify what are the things that are contributing to fatigue, what are the barriers that are currently in place, and could there be something done more effectively or different to manage it.
Thank you. Another question, Jenny. Do you think workers would be more comfortable about reporting the outside work fatigue if their managers had demonstrated true commitment to managing fatigue at work?
Oh, absolutely. I found recently I went to a conference where there were safety and health innovation awards, and one organisation particularly stands out for me that won was an organisation that took mental health, not only fatigue, but all issues to do with emotional and psychological stress, and created a context where conversations are had around how people are feeling. this goes beyond the typical "Are you okay?" These conversations were about taking a genuine interest in every employee, seeing them as people and not simply workers. This was about individuals engaging with these people and asking them, how do they spend their time? What do they do when they're on R&R? And how are things going for them, not only from a fatigue, but also an emotional perspective? That organisation themselves then found the morale, the commitment, the engagement in the work was far greater. Interestingly, they also reported incidents went down, and the number of near misses reported also down, because people had the morale and the alertness to want to speak up and call each other out. So certainly, yeah, I think certainly workers would be more comfortable about reporting outside work fatigue if their managers, their organisations, their leading hands and their peers took an active interest and then responded positively to this kind of feedback.
Thank you. So a key message is about that positive engagement. We have another question. Jenny, how do we influence useful conversations with workers about their fatigue levels if there is an overtime financial driver?
Oh, that's a tricky one. We sometimes as organisations completely shoot ourselves in the foot. On one hand, there is the desire to get a project completed in time, under budget, and on the other hand, we're also told we have a duty of care to look after our employees. It's a very difficult balance between trying to manage production needs with the well-being of workers. However, certainly conversations with workers can be simply as sitting and working alongside each of your workers, driving in the vehicle to and from the project site, the construction site, or simply engaging in crib huts and other conversations in pre-starts around things that are beyond production, things that are beyond financial, things that are beyond targets around timelines, but now having targets around well-being metrics. Some of the organisations with which I work, once well-being, safety and fatigue metrics are defined and clearly talked about, we find that over time and other financial drivers seem to be less of an issue. As the engagement increases, people are more willing to do what's required and performance increases, strangely enough.
Thanks, Jenny. I have a question for you. Do you feel that there is merit in identifying some specific performance measures, lead measures, that organisations could follow? And have you seen any organisations actually put some lead performance measures in that are working to help their management of fatigue?
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, most things around fatigue is measured after an event. No different to how safety is measured, usually after an event, lost time injuries and reportable injuries and so forth. But more and more organisations and some of my customers I've seen implement ideas whereby they measure how many times are leaders having conversations with individuals, but not only how many times or what the frequency of it is, but actually capturing the quality of those conversations around well-being, around emotional stress, physical stress, even psychological stress, and therefore fatigue. Measuring the quality of that and then going to the employees themselves and asking them to comment on how effective those conversations are being, and does the organisation actively care. So we're trying to make something that possibly sounds really convoluted quite simple around, let's just ask a genuine question of well-being that can encompass anything from mental health through to fatigue. And then in that conversation, engage in true wholehearted dialogue with the employee as a person. And that certainly is making a difference in many organisations with which I work.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question. You mentioned it costs the economy $3 billion a year. Does this figure include the lack of productivity if a fatigued worker is at work?
No. Unfortunately, not. And I mentioned the $3 billion cost in the economy, the reality is that that's even just an arbitrary figure. We don't 100% know what is the real risk, fatigue risk that we carry in organisations, and therefore the impact of things like presenteeism and absenteeism and everything else that happens in between. The figure was simply calculated based on some exit interviews and other such results that could be tangibly measured, but nothing at this point that I've come across at least looks at the impact of fatigue on presenteeism and the lack of productivity.
Thank you, Jenny. We don't appear to have any more questions, so we might finalise this webinar. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, Jenny, to present again for us. We sincerely thank you for doing so. I'm sure everyone would agree that your presentation was insightful and gave us all a lot to think about. Thank you all once again for participating in this webinar, and we remind you to register as soon as you can for the final webinar in this Construction Work Health series. Your feedback is always valuable for us, so please take 30 seconds to complete the survey that will pop up once the webinar is over. Thank you and goodbye.